You know that feeling? When you go to pay with your phone and nothing, just that spinning wheel, then failed. So frustrating.
Oh, definitely. Especially now. I mean, we rely on it for almost everything.
Exactly. And recently in India, this wasn't just a one-off glitch. We saw widespread problems with UPI, the main digital payment system there, happen several times.
Yeah, it really highlights how much we depend on these systems that usually just work, in the background.
Yeah,
You send over a great set of sources covering these events, late March to mid-April 2025.
I did. And considering how massive UPI is, these failures really stand out.
They absolutely do.
So our mission today for this deep dive is to really get into what happened with these UPI outages, why it matters, beyond just being annoying and what's being done to fix things. We want to make it clear, not overly technical.
Yeah, sounds good. And just for anyone listening who might not be super familiar, UPI Unified Payments Interface. It's basically the backbone of digital payments in India.
Launched back in 2016, right?
That's right. Super easy to use, lets you send money instantly bank to bank with your phone. It's been a huge factor in India moving towards, well, less cash.
And the thing is, UPI is normally incredibly stable. That's what made this recent string of failures so jarring, really. It's not what people expect.
Exactly. It's usually very reliable.
Okay, so let's get into the timeline. What do the sources tell us about when these disruptions actually happened?
All right, so looking through the materials you shared, between late March and mid-April 2025, there were 4 main incidents, big ones, affecting users across India.
4. Wow.
Yeah. The first one was on March 26th, evening time, around 7 p.m. maybe. Lasted a couple hours, maybe 3.
And the initial reason given?
Just intermittent technical issues. That was the first report.
Okay. The classic technical issues sounds a bit like they weren't sure yet or didn't want to say. What came next?
And then just a few days later, March 31st, another disruption. This one was apparently brief, but again, pan-India.
And the cause this time.
This time they were a bit more specific. Heavy traffic. Said it was because of the financial year-end closing.
Ah, okay, that makes some sense. End of March, lots of financial activity, bank systems under pressure.
Exactly. Stands to reason there'd be a surge then.
So, did things stabilize after that, or?
No. April 2nd, happened again.
Hmm.
Evening, about 7:30 p.m., another brief nationwide outage.
Seriously. What was the explanation this time? Still traffic.
A bit different. They said network latency, and they linked it to fluctuations in the success rates of transactions at some banks.
Okay, so network latency, meaning delays in the system talking to itself, basically,
Yeah.
tied to banks having trouble processing payments.
Yeah, that seems to be the gist. Suggests maybe some instability or strain in the banking networks that UPI connects to.
Right, it's all interconnected. And the last one in this cluster.
That was April 12th. This one started in the morning, around 10 a.m., and for some people, it went on for several hours.
And the reason?
Back to intermittent technical issues. Same explanation as the first one.
4 times in, what, just over 2 weeks? That's significant. And that intermittent technical issues phrase keeps popping up. Feels like we need to unpack that. What else did the sources suggest might be going on?
Yeah, that's the big question, isn't it? What's hiding behind technical issues? The sources explored a few angles.
It's actual software bugs?
That was one possibility raised, hidden glitches in the UPI code itself, or maybe deeper sort of systemic problems that aren't obvious right away.
Yeah.
Things that need a proper, deep investigation.
Sure, software bugs can be notoriously tricky. What about the heavy traffic reason given for March 31st and April 2nd? How big a factor could that really be?
Well, think about the sheer volume UPI handles. Billions of transactions a month now.
Billions, yeah.
So you pile the extra load from year-end financial stuff on top of that normal traffic? Yeah, it could definitely push the infrastructure close to its limits.
Yeah.
UPI depends heavily on the bank systems performing well.
So if the bank systems are strained,
Then UPI feels it. The whole network can slow down or see more failures. It's almost like UPI's incredible success is creating its own scaling challenges, especially at these peak times.
a victim of its own success, maybe? And the network latency thing from April 2nd linked to bank success rates. Can you explain that connection a bit more?
It really highlights how interconnected everything is. If a few big banks suddenly start having more failed transactions on their end, maybe their systems are slow or overloaded,
Okay.
that creates delays. Data isn't flowing smoothly through the UPI network. It's like, imagine a busy highway, and suddenly several exits get jammed up. The traffic on the main highway slows right down.
Okay. That's a good analogy. So delays build up across the whole network because some parts are struggling.
Exactly. It shows it's not just about NPCI's central UPI platform, but the health of all the connected banks is crucial too.
Got it. Were there any other potential causes floated in the sources?
Well, beyond the infrastructure just being overloaded by the sheer volume, which is a real possibility given the growth, remember that record high transaction value in March 2025.
Right, huge numbers.
Some analysts did raise the possibility of cybersecurity incidents. Now, it's really important to stress, NPCI did not confirm this at all.
Okay, pure speculation then.
At this stage, yes.
Mm.
But for any system handling this much money, it's always, a background risk they have to manage.
Makes sense. Anything else? More mundane things.
Yeah, the sources also mention things like potential hardware glitches somewhere in the system, or even fluctuations in the telecom networks that everything relies on. That was mentioned particularly regarding the March 26th outage.
So basic infrastructure stuff too.
And as we touched on with the latency issue, NPCI themselves apparently acknowledged that some issues within the banks contributed to that first March 26th problem. Again, showing how linked it all is.
It really sounds like a tangle of possible factors: hardware, software, networks, bank systems, sheer volume.
Exactly. Which is why pinpointing one single root cause is probably quite difficult. You can see why NPCI said they were doing that thorough root cause analysis after the April 12th one.
Yeah, you'd need to. It's complex. Okay, so how did NPCI, the organization running UPI, actually respond publicly during all this? What were they telling people?
Their main channel seemed to be X, formerly Twitter. They put out statements acknowledging the problems.
Using that intermittent technical issues phrase.
Mostly, yes. Acknowledging intermittent technical issues were causing some transactions to fail. They usually included apologies for the inconvenience, said they were working on it, and would provide updates. Yeah, standard crisis comms, really.
But they were slightly more specific that one time.
Right. For the April 2nd one, they did mention the bank's success rate fluctuations and the network latency. So a little bit more detail there.
But mostly sticking to the general technical issues line suggests maybe they weren't entirely sure themselves initially or just cautious about what they said publicly.
Could be either or both. Now, let's shift to the impact. The people actually trying to pay for things. What was it like for them?
Oh, it sounds like chaos, frankly. The sources paint a picture of real disruption to everyday life.
People just unable to pay.
Exactly. Trying to buy groceries, pay for parking, grab something from a small shop, and the UPI payment just fails again and again.
And since so many people rely on UPI now, and maybe don't carry much cash,
they're stuck. Huge frustration. I read reports of people getting debit alerts money showing as deducted even when the payment failed.
oh, that's the worst. Double anxiety, money gone, but the merchant didn't get it. Nightmare.
Total nightmare. And it caused real problems. One source mentions someone stuck at a hospital unable to pay. You saw loads of complaints on social media, people venting.
Of course, memes probably popped up too.
Oh, definitely. Memes are the universal sign of collective tech frustration. But it wasn't just individuals, right? Businesses must have been hit hard too.
Absolutely. Direct impact. Lost sales, obviously, if customers couldn't pay.
Especially smaller businesses.
Yeah, they might not have easy alternatives. I saw that example of the Red Dragon food chain having to jot down customer details to try and collect payment later. Very inefficient.
Wow. And bigger retailers.
They might have shifted people to card payments, but cards often cost the merchant more in transaction fees than UPI does. So, higher costs for them.
And some businesses got cautious.
Seems so. Petrol pumps asking for payment upfront or suggesting other methods before filling tanks. E-commerce sites also saw delays, maybe had to push cash on delivery or cards more.
So real ripple effects through the economy, big and small businesses, online and offline.
Definitely. It really shows how deeply embedded UPI is now. It's not just a convenience, it's critical infrastructure.
Which makes you want to understand the system itself a bit better. Can you give us a quick rundown? How is UPI actually built? Where are the potential weak spots?
Sure. So UPI is an instant payment system. NPCI, National Payments Corporation of India, developed and runs it. Launched 2016.
Built on existing tech.
Yeah, it uses an open source API. API is like a set of rules allowing different software programs to talk to each other.
Okay, so apps can connect easily.
Exactly. Makes it easy for companies like PhonePe or Google Pay to build UPI apps. And it uses the older IMPS immediate payment service infrastructure underneath to actually move the money instantly.
For both person-to-person and paying businesses.
Yep, P2P and P2M. Usually using those virtual payment addresses, VPAs, like a simple email for payments, or just scanning QR codes.
Which we see everywhere now. And who are the main players involved in a transaction?
You've got NBCI itself, the bank sending the money, the bank receiving the money, and the payment service provider, the app, basically.
And what coordinates all that?
There's a central UPI switch run by NPCI. Think of it as the air traffic controller.
Okay. Directing traffic?
Pretty much. It routes the payment messages between everyone, handles the security checks, authentication, authorization, and make sure the money moves correctly.
Right. So, given that setup, where could things potentially go wrong? What are the inherent vulnerabilities?
Well, several places. First, glitches right in that central NPCI switch, or problems inside the bank's own core systems. That could cause major issues.
Software bugs again, basically.
Could be. Second, just sheer overload. Too many transactions hitting the servers at once, especially peak times. We saw those record numbers in March. Ours, 24.77 trillion. That's immense pressure.
Wow. Yeah, that's staggering. What else?
Network problems. The connections between all these players, NPCI, banks, apps. If those connections are slow or unstable, that latency issue again, transactions fail. It relies on good internet and Telecom networks.
Dependence on underlying networks. Makes sense.
Then there's security. Because it uses that open API, making it easy to connect, security has to be top-notch. It's a big target for cyber threats against NPCI, banks, even users.
Constant battle there, I imagine.
Always. And scalability, just keeping up with the growth. Can the infrastructure expand fast enough? Integrating with older bank systems can also be tricky, create weak points.
Legacy systems causing problems.
Sometimes. And finally, because it's so interconnected, a problem in one spot can cascade, affect other parts of the system, like dominoes falling.
So a lot of potential points of failure to manage. Seems like a huge balancing act. What are NPCI and, say, the Reserve Bank of India doing to try and prevent this happening again? What steps are they taking for resilience?
Okay, so the sources mentioned several things. NPCI, as we said, acknowledged the issues, talked about doing root cause analysis.
Did they mention fixing anything specific?
Yeah, there was a report about them doing hardware replacement after the March 26th outage. So concrete steps sometimes. And generally, they keep talking about enhancing UPI's resilience, making it more robust.
What about the cybersecurity angle?
Big focus there. They talk about having a comprehensive cybersecurity framework, things like continuous risk monitoring, advanced security operations centers, adopting a zero-trust approach.
Zero trust, meaning?
Yeah. Basically, don't automatically trust anyone or anything trying to connect. Verify everything. Plus, using threat intelligence, better security tools, regular audits by outside firms, training staff, standard best practices for critical systems.
Okay, sounds thorough on the security front. What about helping users or preventing issues at the user or app level?
Well, their advice during outages is often just try again later, as issues might be temporary. The RBI, India's central bank, is also involved. They push banks on their operational resilience and have specific cyber rules for payment systems like UPI.
RBI setting standards.
Right. And NPCI itself has done things like issuing guidelines to deactivate UPI IDs that haven't been used in a long time. That's a security measure. They're also looking at ways to fight fraud, like potentially getting rid of pull transactions, where merchants can initiate a debit.
Ah, interesting. Less potential for unauthorized debit.
Possibly. And they've told banks to block transactions from any UPI apps that don't meet the latest security standards, trying to enforce security across the board.
So it's definitely a multi-pronged effort. Fixing tech, boosting security, setting rules, trying to protect users.
It seems like they are responding, yes, trying to learn from these incidents and strengthen the system.
The fact these happen so close together suggests maybe there's still work to do to get that consistency people expect.
That seems fair to say. Achieving near-perfect reliability for something this huge and complex is an ongoing challenge.
Okay, let's try and wrap this up. To summarize our deep dive, we looked at the series of UPI disruptions in India recently, explored the possible causes, technical gremlins, system overload, network delays, maybe even security worries, though unconfirmed.
Right. And we saw the real impact this had. Frustration for everyday users, financial hits for businesses, raised questions about UPI's reliability, didn't it?
It definitely did. And while NPCI is acknowledging the problems and taking steps, hardware fixes, boosting security, analyzing root causes, there's still a clear need for perhaps more transparency on exactly why these happened and ongoing proactive work to make sure UPI can handle the load and stay reliable.
Couldn't agree more. Which brings us to a final thought, really, for our listeners to consider.
Go on.
Given how absolutely vital UPI has become to India's economy and how much everyone relies on digital payments now. What are the bigger implications if disruptions like these become, say, more common? What does that mean for society, for the economy?
Yeah, that's a heavy question.
And maybe on a personal level, what responsibility do we have as users? Should we be thinking about backups? Maybe keeping a little cash handy just in case. Something to mull over.
Definitely food for thought.
Hmm.
So we hope this deep dive gave you a clear picture of the recent UPI issues, the potential causes, the impacts, the responses. It really highlights the challenge of running digital infrastructure at this massive scale.
Hopefully it sparks some thought about our own reliance on these systems and why stability matters so much.
Maybe you'll be interested enough to look more into NPCI's role or how these payment systems are actually designed. Lots to explore there.
Indeed.
We want to thank you again for sharing your sources with us and trusting us to do this deep dive into the UPI situation.